Namaste. One of the things I wanted to discuss is what is Vedic? Specifically, what is Vedic literature? This is one of the things I've discussed and written about more clearly on my website, but I thought I'd touch upon it in this video as well, because some people do prefer to just kind of browse the videos and things, so I thought, well, let me put it on there and see if it can be helpful to anybody. But to begin explaining what is really Vedic, we can understand that the word Veda has its root in the Sanskrit word vid, which means to know, and simply means knowledge. The word Veda also has three root meanings, representing its connection with the power of God, namely one, that Vedic knowledge is eternal. Two, Veda is the essential knowledge itself, which means that it provides knowledge of God, or that we can know the Supreme through the Veda. And three, Veda gives the most desirable thing to the souls, which is the divine bliss that comes from our connection with God. But this is the point. We have to understand this through the proper knowledge, and Veda is that proper channel for understanding this. Therefore, any part of the literature which does this and supports the Vedic conclusion is a part of the Vedic literature. This is confirmed in the Vishnu Purana, such as the Brahmaparva 4, verse 96, where it says, the Vedas, Vedic mantras, and Vedic literature are three parts of the same body, end quote. According to the Vedic tradition, when the Supreme Lord created this material world, his transcendental energy pervaded every corner of it. This spiritual energy was the pure vibration, or Shabda Brahma, in which the Supreme himself can be found. It is explained that first there was the subtle vibration of spiritual sound, the eternal and spiritual vibration called the Shabda Brahma, and it is explained that through the worship of this subtle form of the Vedas, the mystics can cleanse their hearts of all faults and impurities caused by the association of various material substances and actions. Thus, they can attain liberation from further cycles of birth and death. And from this spiritual sound vibration, Srila Vyasadeva compiled the Vedic literature. This was explained in the Bhagavatam, 12th canto, 6th chapter. As most scholars on the Vedic philosophy know, when you say Vedas, you refer to the original four Vedas, meaning the Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva Vedas. From the four main Vedas are branches or appendices called Brahmanas, which relate to the rituals and ceremonies. From these are derived the Aranyakas, or plus then, thereafter, the Upanishads, which are the appendices or the secret and esoteric knowledge of the Aranyakas. Now when you say Veda without the S, you not only refer to the four Vedas, but also to the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads, or all the texts that are considered Shriti. Now Shriti is considered the original revealed knowledge which was unveiled to self-realized sages. Shriti also means that which is heard. It was first heard from God and then was heard or passed along in an oral tradition in the association of other sages. In this way, it was protected from being misunderstood or misused. It is this sound vibration that will awaken mankind's higher awareness and inclination to attain the spiritual dimension, thus providing the means for mankind's liberation from material existence. The remaining parts of the Vedic literature, besides the Tantras and the Agamas, consist of the Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, and the Puranas. And these are the Itihasas, or the histories, and supplemental portions of the Vedic literature. And this is called Shriti, or that which is remembered. The Puranas are also, especially in elaboration of the original Vedic concepts and philosophy of the four Vedas and Upanishads. So when we say Vedic literature, it refers to both the Shruti and Smriti in a general way. However, some scholars think that the Shruti is more important than the Smriti. So some may object to the way, for example, I alternatively use the words Vedas and Vedic literature to refer to the same thing, because they support each other. They support the same conclusions, in other words. So this includes all of the Vedic texts, both the early Shruti and later Smriti. And the reason why I do this is that I present Vedic evidence from any portion of the Vedic literature, and I often use quotes from the Puranas. In other words, when I talk about something, Sometimes people say that I use a lot of quotes, but that's because anybody can say any damn thing, but without authorization, which is based on authority, such as quotations or references, it doesn't mean anything. So that's why I use a lot of this. So, in other words, to leave out the supplemental portions of the Vedic literature would deprive the reader of an enormous amount of Vedic knowledge and elaborated explanations. Furthermore, some of the greatest of spiritual authorities, like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, and others, have presented Shriti as valid evidence of spiritual truths and wrote commentaries on, for example, Bhagavad Gita. In fact, Madhvacharya, in his commentary on the Vedanta Sutras, on Book 2, Chapter 1, Verse 6, quotes the Vivishya Purana, which states, and I quote, "The Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, Mahabharata, Pancharatra, and the original Ramayana are all considered Vedic literature. The Vaishnava supplements, namely the Puranas, are also Vedic literature," end quote. Even the Chandogya Upanishad 7.1.4 mentions the Puranas as the fifth Veda. The Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 4, Verse 20, also clearly agrees with this, saying the four divisions of the original sources of knowledge, meaning the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the fifth Veda, end quote. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Book 4, Chapter 5, Verse 11, also relates the Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva Vedas, the Itihasas, Puranas, Upanishads, verses, mantras, and sutras, and the spiritual knowledge and explanations within, all emanate from the Supreme Being, end quote. Therefore, it is not only says that once, but it also says in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, again in Book 2, Chapter 4, Verse 10, and I quote, "As from fire kindled with wet fuel clouds of smoke issue forth, so, my dear, verily from this glorious great God has been breathed forth the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Samaveda, the Atharva Vedas, the Itihasas, the Puranas, science of knowledge, and mystic doctrines or Upanishads, the verses, the aphorisms, the elucidations, and commentaries. From him, indeed, are all these breathed forth," end quote, which means they all emanate from him. Thus, they all have importance in presenting Vedic information, and one should not be biased toward one set of Shastra or scripture to exclude the other. This point is confirmed again in the Vivishya Purana, in the Brahmaparva, Chapter 7, Verse 55, where it says, Shruti refers to the four Vedas, and Smriti refers to the revealed scriptures that were compiled in pursuance of the Vedic version. One should consult both kinds of scriptures as a guide to all one's activities, because religion that does not refer to them is simply a disturbance to society, end quote. Now, the Mahabharata, in the Adi Parva, Chapter 1, Verse 267, also explains the necessity of understanding Vedic knowledge with the help of the Puranas. And it quotes, "One should expand and accept the meaning of the Vedas with the help of the Itihasas and Puranas. The Vedas are afraid of being mistreated by one who is ignorant of the Itihasas and the Puranas," end quote. This is quite similar to what is related in the Prabhaskanda section of the Skanda Purana, Chapter 2, Verse 93, where it is said, and I quote, "I consider the Puranas equal to the Vedas. The Vedas feared that their purport would be distorted by inattentive listening, but their purport was established long ago by the Itihasas and Puranas. What is not found in the Vedas is found in the Smritis, or the Puranas, and what is not found in either is described in the Puranas. A person who knows the four Vedas along with the Upanishads, but who does not know the Puranas, is not very learned," end quote. In this way, we should understand that one's education in Vedic culture and science is not complete if one excludes the understanding and knowledge given in the Puranas. To further verify this point, in the Naradiya Purana, Lord Shiva specifically is quoted as saying to his wife, Parvati, that, and I quote, "I consider the message of the Puranas to be more important than that of the Vedas. All that is in the Vedas is in the Puranas, without a doubt," end quote. So I relate this simply for those who feel that there should be some further distinction between Shruti and Smriti and may object to the way I, for example, use the terms Vedas and Vedic literature to mean the same thing, although many parts of the Vedic literature point to the need for using the Puranas and other portions of the Smritis to more fully understand the depths of Vedic knowledge. So I hope this can increase your understanding of the importance of using both Smriti and Shruti, or the Vedic samhitas, namely the Rig, Sama, Atharva, and Yajur Vedas, along with the Puranas. They're all part of the same thing. They all support each other. The conclusions are for understanding the Vedic knowledge itself. So this is why, for example, I use both quotes from the Shrutis and the Smritis to reach the proper conclusions as exemplified and explained in this little presentation. Thank you so much. Namaste. Jai Shri Krishna.